I've never liked that Louis kid. Like, in the 50 years I've known him, never.
He was a
real piece of work. That's so-and-so.
It's interesting. Ironically, he's a friend of mine.
We don't have sources on this show.
Boy Meets World ruined my life.
What if the goats are trying to communicate?
You guys ever listen to Botch? I put on a lot of weight. I am the elephant. Welcome to Tales from the Ditch on another very arousing night. Sorry, we're Sean, I'm Seth, and then we have our guest back again, Jason Bennett. Good to see you, man.
Yeah, good to see you guys.
Good to have you, Jason. This is your third time on, right?
Second.
This is your second time? Did we? Man, I felt
'Cause
like
I had-
had you back one time.
I had like groups on Tuesday nights always. And,
Yeah, it was always hard.
yeah.
Thank God for winter break.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, what's new for you? Anything interesting going on lately?
Well, we had all of our girls here for Christmas. We stayed up in Tahoe.
Nice.
And it was just one of those cool things that might not happen for a few years because, you know, one daughter is traveling the world, one daughter's in North Carolina. So we had a lot of good family time, a lot of time around the fire, a lot of little walks and stuff.
That's awesome.
You have 3 daughters?
Yeah,
Okay.
There's snow up there?
there was, but it was tempered enough to like enjoy the outside.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. So we like forest, we like cabins, and we like fires.
That just sounds relaxing.
Awesome.
It so is.
I
And
should
so you are,
look into things that are relaxing.
you're
Google.
just about an empty nester, yeah?
We are.
You are
We
officially.
are empty nesters, and so
Oh, nice.
all the girls went home, and today we felt just a little awesome.
Melancholic, but also...
Yeah, you're sad, but you like the lack of noise.
Yeah.
And I've never been one for noise, ever. And so
Right.
it's really nice to be back to normal and quiet again.
Nice.
Yeah. Don't let my daughters know, man.
Well, this is our first podcast in 2020,
Oh, cool.
I believe, right? Yeah.
Has to be. Yeah,
Yeah, it has to
I'm
be.
only here because of contractual
We
obligation.
stopped. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you got 2 more years.
Let's be honest. Viacom
Work release.
screwed me with that. I don't think I did anything. I mean, I had a match over break, and I drank beer and put on weight.
Yeah,
And that's what I did for break.
Your Muay
That's
Thai
it.
match was great. You were dieting for months, I feel like. But the last week or so,
Dear.
you got really extreme, dropped a bunch of weight, made weight. You made 169, right?
It was like 169 or 170. Yeah, I was right on the limit. It was right
Yeah.
on the limit.
And then we traveled over the mountain, over Donner Pass.
Over the Misty Mountains.
to the distant Sacramento.
Good old Sac.
And you got there and started hitting pads and warming up and getting ready for your fight. You were
Doing
the
my
5th
steroids.
match. Yeah,
Injecting.
injecting and
You know.
You took your gear.
slapping
Yeah, I
yourself.
took my gear. I had to, inject safely in my eyes and my
And
neck.
your opponent, who I don't know if we should talk about it.
Yeah.
Either way,
first
somebody-
opponent dropped out.
Yeah, your first opponent backed out, and then the second guy wouldn't agree to it, and so they had to pick a guy who was turned out to be a really cool guy named
Awesome
Dino.
guy. Yeah.
And I think he was maybe one class up. I don't know.
You say that. I might have just been pudgier than him, and
He
you
was-
think he was
I
one-
don't know.
I
He
might
was
have been the
heavy.
same weight class.
But he decided to take that on a whim.
Yeah, like
And that
1
was
minute
super
notice.
cool, like
Oh,
a warrior.
man.
And you guys duked it out. You did a really good job. And you, most importantly, landed the axe kick.
Oh,
which
you
is the
did?
most fundamental kick.
Goodness.
Oh, that kills shoulders.
I'm not gonna lie. I was just as surprised as my opponent because I threw it as a Hail Mary, more like, well, I mean, what's gonna get worse? And when it hit him, I was like, oh, like that actually landed. And then the
worked.
round ended. I was like, oh, but the ref was like,
Yeah, he
pumped
was
on-
stoked. He was stoked.
The ref
to see an
was?
axe kick. Yeah,
I
He's
think
all nobody does this.
he was in his sweatpants and like t-shirt, like just reffing. You could tell he was volunteer. And he was like, "Oh, cool, man." He's like, he was pumped to be there.
That was
like,
awesome.
But no, yeah, it went good. I had that. Yeah, there wasn't much over. Oh, I preached the week after, and I still had a bruise on my chest from him kicking me on my left side.
Oh.
And I was like, that's the other thing, man. I don't recover like I used to. It was a week after the match, and I still was like, because it was just one knee he threw.
Was it your ribs?
It was my sternum. He hit me in the xiphoid process.
Oh, yeah.
And it didn't drop me, but even a week later, I was like, man, it still doesn't. It felt inflamed. So I'm good now. But
That's usually a death shot.
it sucked. He
Into
like
that.
jumped into it. The knee. He was like jumping into his knees a little bit. And I wasn't blocking him. I was like eating him for some reason because apparently I think that's how you fight. So, what about you though, Sean? What'd you do over break?
Got sick right in time for Christmas, but it was all right. It just meant we got to lay down and catch up on a bunch of shows and got well enough right in time to go do some family Christmas stuff. And then for Tales from the Ditch New Year's, we hung out at Keel Bar. Still sponsored by Keel.
Was that all we did on New Year's?
We hung out for a little while, got some drinks, and after New Year's, we decided to do another New Year's with our own, I don't know how to say it, fire W's?
Explosives.
Maybe that.
Illegal
maybe that's too obvious.
explosives.
How about F works?
Yes.
We found some stuff which is in Nevada. Highly, the cops don't like it so much, but either
Very
way,
looked down upon.
we reined in the new year and we got a crowd. We had a crowd of people walking around downtown Reno, and they were
Filming
all
us.
ushering to us in the parking lot of this certain place that we were on the roof of. And we had, like, honestly, a full-on crowd was like, yeah, do more fireworks. But by the time we were done, we were, like, hearing a couple sirens and stuff. We decided to
I
take
just
off.
didn't like that they were filming me. So I just covered my face the whole time. I had gloves on, too.
Yeah.
I'm not stupid. I'm not
But
getting
it was
my
a good
prints
time.
on
We
for
had a good
everything.
time. I missed the bus. I never told you on the way home.
I
'cause
could have
took
picked
the
you
bus.
up, man.
Well, I didn't know I missed the bus. So I skated over to the bus station and got there. And they were like, yeah, that was the last bus. I was like, dude, it's New Year's. And it was like 1:30 or something.
Yeah.
And they were like, you just missed the last bus. And I was like, oh, man. And I skated all the way home.
I went home and was like, I need to go to sleep. Like, I have stuff to do with the family tomorrow. I'm going to go do fun things. And I turned on Bill Burr. And I went to sleep instead like 3 a.m. And then the kids woke up at 6 and they're like, yeah, we all have a day off, Daddy. Let's do something. I was like, oh, I smell like fireworks and scotch. I was like, oh, man. I was like, okay, we still did stuff, but no joke. I was dragging. I was like, staying out. It's one that all right,
Not as
Jason,
young
you
as I
might
used to
be able to understand this. Staying out till 3 a.m. when I was 17 was dope. It was fun. Now I feel like a corpse in the morning. I feel like a Yeti, like
Burnt.
like defiled me, destroyed me. I was lit on fire, like beat up. I wake up, I'm like, my body is just broken. It was, I went to bed at 3 a.m. I woke up at like 2:40. I was like, oh, Bill Burr. Turned off TV, went to bed, and I finally fell asleep at 3. And I woke up smelling like fireworks and scotch. So that's a good New Year's, right?
That could be a good band name. Fireworks and
scotch.
Fireworks and scotch.
We saw guys get in and I'm not gonna call it a fight because it wasn't a chest bumping match, and then do nothing.
Oh, yeah. And then walked away. And
Little cockfight.
boys, his boys were like, you totally could have taken him. And I was like, get out of my way. I'm trying to smoke a cigar.
I was trying to smoke and Google stuff, and I was walking by. I was like, I don't care. I was just texting.
It was good times. We had a good time.
I thought
Pretty
it
good
was
for
fun.
Tales.
No one puked.
All our fans showed up.
Did they now?
I just got that.
Anyways, so
Jason had a topic.
yeah, Jason. So we talked about this a little bit earlier, and you have a topic that is kind of pretty close to you and something that you are pretty experienced with, and I think it's actually a really good idea because it's something we've never really officially talked about. And it might be something that's good. And Seth doesn't even know what it is yet.
No.
So
Christmas all over again.
I don't prepare for this podcast. That doesn't. People are like, "How you come up with the topics?" I'm like, I start talking
on the spot. Yeah, usually.
That's when you say we're impromptu, bro.
Yeah, I just go where spirit leads.
So here we are. Jason, I don't know if you want to intro it.
Yeah, sure.
Go for it.
So it was like last year, and we were watching a couple shows where they had like people with autism as like part of the cast. This Is Us. I don't know if you guys have seen that.
Yeah.
They have the young boy and then the photographer. Then this show I'm watching, Atypical.
Okay.
He's also autistic. And my friends and my family started like every time something happened with them or whatever, they would just kind of look at me out the side of their eye and stuff. And eventually my friends and family told me that I act like them in many ways.
Really?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And ever since last year, I've been trying to process what that means, so
Wow, man.
It's not like I'm ashamed or whatever, but I'm just now like accepting it and trying to embrace it and try to understand it a little bit.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So in the 70s, before that, my mom had described me as a little kid, like, you have baby books with photos and stuff. She had described me as backwards and odd. And I thought, oh, that's really nice.
Thanks, Mom.
That's beautiful. And she gave me that. It was a picture. What do they call those things? Picture.
Polaroid or the
big
photo album.
Thank you, photo album.
Oh, I don't have. I burned mine, so I don't know.
Yeah. So started getting checked out and stuff. Psychiatrist.
Yeah.
Stuff like that, and the psychiatrist I took it with and stuff. She said I was a 140 out of 200.
Really?
Yeah. So.
What's that score mean?
It means I'm right in between high functioning and not functioning.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Wow.
Yeah.
So as an adult,
oh yeah,
as a grown ass man,
yeah,
you found out you have autism.
Yeah,
essentially,
I do.
That's crazy.
It is, and it was freeing and sad all at the same time, because in a way, other people recognize that, this is a neurological disorder, and some of the odd things that you might do according to society, there are many other people like that.
Yeah.
That there's a neurological development issue, and that's what causes autism.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's neurological. Does that mean it's synapses, or is it chemical, or what is it? Is it kind of how things fire off in your brain? Okay.
It's a lot of chemical related development. So if you have too much dopamine, like a neurotransmitter, if you have too much dopamine, that can cause autism.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know any of this. No.
Yeah. And so it started causing me to think like, okay, this would explain a lot in my life. In terms of the last time I was here talking about creating a false self of sorts, that false self also covered for my autistic self.
Wow. Yeah.
Holy crap.
And so rather than be embarrassed and made fun of or whatever, I created a self that could be extroverted and on top of things and never forgetting anything.
Now it's like learn, right? Like I always hear about because we grew up with a couple of kids who had autism, specifically Asperger's,
Yeah.
and they talk about learned emotions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like they learn to smile,
Yes.
even though they're not actually smiling
Correct.
in response to an emotion. So it's kind of like that false self is like a learned behavior almost.
Yes.
Wow.
It's almost like learning a craft.
Wow.
Is to seem normal and maybe even special to society.
Wow.
Jeez.
That's crazy.
And many autists go through that. They either fake not to be or they hate normal people.
Oh, jeez. Wow.
Yeah.
I hate normal people. Should I?
I'll hook you up with my psychiatrist. So.
I appreciate it. That is just, that's interests me because it's like, I don't know. One of the things I've noticed is, like, people get so frustrated with the next generation and all that, and that's a whole nother discussion. But one thing I've noticed is with the next generation being allegedly more emotional, you're having more openness talk about mental health.
Oh, yeah.
And with that diagnosis and with that, issues such as autism. And you're able to talk about it because, perfect example, my Opa, he clearly had PTSD, but back then they said, well, you're sad. You're sad. You just need to get, you need to deal with it.
How easy is that?
Yeah. You're shell shocked. And back then, autism, they probably said, yeah, like that. Like, well, he's just odd. Now,
yes.
I'm kind of really grateful to God that we can talk about this and it doesn't have to be this taboo thing. It's like, well, no, it's just my friend. We're just talking to our friend about this. Because the 50s would have been like, well, you just need to act like the other kids.
Yes.
Why can't you do it? Now it's like he's saying this and I go, okay, let's talk about it. Like it's weird. I don't know if it's my age, but I don't feel any taboo about it. I go.
Yeah, it was more shameful earlier on.
Okay.
In the 70s where I grew up, they didn't know about Asperger's or autism or anything or the spectrum. And typically what that would mean for me and probably many like me is that your dad and mom are trying to keep an appearance to society that their children are awesome, they're smart, they don't have any deficiencies.
Okay.
And my odd behavior was my dad beat me for odd behavior. So,
oh man.
And so I remember last time I was here, I talked about how I didn't have an opinion, I couldn't feel emotions and stuff like that. So it's like being trapped in your body, all these emotions and feeling like you're a piece of shit, just to find out way later in your life that there are people like you.
Jeez.
Yeah. No kidding.
Yeah. So early it started out, I almost didn't pass first grade because I was bored out of my mind. And that was reading problem, which I have no issues with that now, but I did. Used to pull my hair out. I don't know if you guys have seen that. Some people will pull their hair out for anxiety reasons.
Yeah.
I saw
Or
it.
just basically rub a spot in their head raw.
Yeah. Jeez.
Yeah, that was one of the first indicators my parents should have picked up on, but they didn't know what they were dealing with. I don't understand things when they're first said. So I don't know if you've ever met somebody, but you tell them something and they go, what?
Yeah.
I don't understand typically first words.
Oh, wow.
So sometimes I have to interpret maybe what you're saying by context.
Still to this day?
Yeah.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And then they thought I was crazy because I wear sunglasses inside. Lights hurt my eyes. Noises drive me nuts. I have tactile issues where I have to buy the softest of clothing. Regular waistbands on pants or whatever, hurt my skin.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so, those are just some of the things that I had to work through on my own in secret.
Jeez. And back in the 70s and 80s, I feel like I was raised to understand that those kids are the bad kids that you want to stay away from.
Yeah.
Because they have behavioral issues.
They do, yeah.
And
I got in trouble for those a lot.
Yeah, you would always get in trouble, I'm sure. And and we were just told, hey, these are the kids to stay away from.
Yeah.
When that's almost the opposite.
It's
of
a
what
shaming effect.
Yeah, totally.
They just can't listen. They just can't act normal. They
Right.
Why can't you just?
They always ask me, why can't you focus? Well, I can't like you do. So maybe you need to change your school approach.
Totally.
Haven't you preached?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was going to say, I was
One of
like,
the greatest sermons I've ever
I've heard you preach. Okay, so what does that? See, that's crazy to me because, all right, and this is coming from someone, the reason I asked is, so I've preached before, you've preached, so has Sean. Yes, it's public speaking, but there's more of that because there's so many elements in it, but how did that affect public speaking?
It affects it badly.
Gee, I wouldn't have even noticed because I watched it. I thought you did good. It was a great sermon. Like, I wouldn't have even noticed.
Well, I appreciate it, but it takes a lot of rehearsal in my mind.
Okay.
To have to be able to do it. The doctor noticed I had irregular speech patterns, long pauses, weird facial deals. And so in terms of preaching, I can do it and I like to do it, but I preach in smaller environments.
Okay.
Counseling environments.
Yeah.
I preach the gospel to individuals or groups.
Wow.
Because when I go up on a stage with my condition, my disorder, I have physical problems when I go up there. Anxiety's through the roof. I sweat, almost like an adrenaline dump.
Yeah.
And then I try to impress people. And that was a hard one for Mindy, that through the years of me preaching, she felt like I wasn't being myself 100%.
Oh, wow.
The reason I wasn't being myself 100% because being weird or awkward is kind of rough on a stage.
Sure, yeah. And it's all your false self trying to avoid the shame.
Embarrassment, shame.
Yeah. Oh, gosh, that sounds terrible.
So if I had not created a false self to deal with society, I wouldn't have made it. You'll see people that have autism that they are pretty much stay at home. They can't drive. They typically can't hold jobs or do well in interviews. And they're usually, a lack of eye contact bothers a lot of companies. And I'm horrible at it. They're horrible at it. So a lot of people are missing out on intelligent people.
Yeah.
They just act and think a little differently than you do.
Well, because I remember when we stole Ryan Smith's cigarettes. Like,
Yeah.
Here's the thing. It was just a conversation, and it was enlightening. It was encouraging. I had a good time where I was like,
Yeah, me
oh,
too.
that's cool. And it's like, I walked away from that, our conversation, feeling encouraged, going, man, that was kind of cool. Just getting to do that, getting to talk like humans. And yeah, that stinks that we have some of that cultural stuff, because you might be missing out on a really good worker because of a societal norm of how you're supposed to interact.
totally.
Good worker, good friend,
Good friend.
or a good pastor.
Yeah,
Definitely.
right?
And so I don't fall into the typical pastoral roles where, most of a team is preparing sermons. They're presiding, which now it's called hosting.
Is that what we say? Are we
we
supposed to say
change it?
hosting?
Yeah, we're changing that so that other types of people can.
Know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Make outsiders insiders.
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
stuff.
Okay.
Well, if I want to make insiders outsiders, like
Right?
just
There's
black
a few
ops.
of them.
You got to have your church discipline in line.
Yeah, I call them sleeper cells. It's just, how do we make outsiders? Oh man, I really got to pay attention to these meetings.
So can I ask you something, Jason? And,
Yeah.
and this might take a couple minutes for me to try to explain like it usually does when I talk about words, but I've expressed before, and this is just me as somebody who has learned to like downplay emotion in my life because it's just never brought anything good for me necessarily.
Right.
And so one of my biggest struggles in operating in the Christian faith is I don't have a lot of these extremely emotional experiences, right? And a lot of people, and Shay's called me out on this a bunch, say like, we want to see some people really raising their hands and connecting with their frailty and maybe sin or just devotion to God on a Sunday morning during a thing. And I've always felt weird because I'm like, sometimes I just don't feel it.
Right.
Sometimes I don't have that emotion and I just have to do it because I
Why
have
can't
to
you
do it.
raise them in the air like you just don't care? I don't-
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. That's what I
So,
struggle with.
One of the worst things that you could be doing is manufacturing a feeling
Yeah.
because you'd
Right?
be fake before God.
Right? Yeah.
It would
That's
be
kinda
dishonesty.
how I feel.
But there are ways to improve your empathy and how you feel through healing.
Okay. Interesting. So have you because I guess this is my point. Neither of us could tell that you have struggled with this your entire life.
No.
This is
I
something
was just
that
smoking with them. I didn't ask enough questions, apparently.
yeah.
Should have been like, what are your numbers, dog? Where are you at? 140 or what?
Well,
Just a lot of tools.
Yeah, and a lot of that is like learned behavior or maybe even that false self, which is crazy.
Some of it's necessary to work in the world.
Yeah, because the world's just not ready.
Yeah,
for
they're
that,
not ready for
World's terrible.
right?
what I have to say.
But how hard is it, or do you even have to deal with at all on a Sunday and you're not there for anybody else? You're there to connect with the Lord.
Yeah.
Is it a struggle for you to like do that genuinely and not out of your false self or that learned behavior?
To show praise?
Yeah, like on an external level.
To some degree, autists have to they have to accept to some level that they won't have certain feelings or understandings about things. And I believe that is true to some degree for all humans.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. What you'll find surprising about autists is that their empathy is through the roof.
Really?
So you might have someone who looks like Spock, showing no emotion. You know, we all know some of these people.
Yes.
They may never make eye contact. They may say things weird. But as soon as you're hurting or as soon as there's a problem, typically they will be in tune with that.
Really?
Yeah. They've done research on levels of empathy of autistic people.
You know, that actually makes a lot of sense. Thinking back on people that we grew up with who were on the spectrum, that we never could connect with them unless we were being vulnerable and showing them
That's correct.
pain and
It's literally because small talk is very painful for us, and we really strive for the deeper philosophical kind of conversations.
Interesting.
And so sometimes we're kind of rude and abrupt in simple talk. You know, when someone's just BSing with me, I have to make a decision. Am I going to be vulnerable or am I going to tune them out?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Is that even the
I like
correct,
that.
what Sean said, spectrum? Is that still correct? Like how to describe
Yeah.
it?
The newest from the DSM-5, which is basically how you diagnose anything and everything with your brain. Can you say that again? Sorry.
Yeah, no. So when people say like spectrum for autism, is that still the correct jargon or verbiage for it, the way to describe it?
So ASD is now the official term in the psychological Bible of measuring people on the whole spectrum.
Okay.
What they've attempted to do is say there is no such thing as Asperger's. Well, the Asperger's community says, oh no. We're not ashamed of who we are. We've been identifying like this, and we're going to continue our movement.
Okay.
Because Asperger's is HFA. It's high-functioning autism.
Okay.
Right, yeah.
And so to have high-functioning autism, there's a lot to work with there in terms of society. If you get below the HFA, this is where autists have the most problem being accepted, appreciated, and loved in society.
Okay.
Right. And sometimes if you're low, I guess it's low, right? If you're very low on the spectrum, sometimes you are never going to be accepted. You know, you're never going to be able to have a job or carry out some of those tasks.
It's true. I'm on the border, so I'm not HFA, but I'm not severe.
Wow.
So
that's so crazy.
Yeah. So there are now organizations that advocate for autism and get people who have a little bit more of it, if you know what I mean, to have jobs. They train them to do jobs that are typically more tedious and repetitive.
Yeah.
But they happen to be very good at tedious and repetitive.
Yeah.
So you get them into a factory. Their one thing is to put this one microchip into a motherboard.
Yeah.
And they do that for 4 hours.
Wow. Huh.
Some of the highest producers of...
I'm sure.
Because they're like a robot. And ching, 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 ching.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so, like...
hyper-focused.
Is it... So, it's much different than the, like, stereotype or trope of, like, the... I'm thinking of, like, the Rain Man. Was that what it was called?
Rain Man.
Yeah. That's using an extreme to prove a point.
Right. Or the kid... What was it? On the Wizard? The movie The Wizard? And he's
Yeah,
like, California,
he brings up
and he had to go to
California.
see dinosaurs.
Yeah, a lot of that is their perception of, well, here's, I wonder how many people making those films and like even had a relative with autism, because it seemed like they took some generalities that some people had said and went,
generalities are harsh.
Here's what we do. Whereas I don't think they were concerned with nuance. I don't think Dustin Hoffman cared. And he was with Tom Cruise, who had his own stuff going on. So I don't know.
Right.
So do you think that now, I mean, obviously nowadays, at least in the medical community, they're understanding it better. And like you said, there's organizations that are finding great matches in careers.
They are.
Do you think, like, as far as, like, representation in media or society, that's improved at all?
Well, you have these onesie-twosies organizations that put out little sayings or little memes or regarding it.
Okay.
Typically in that bunch of people, they're basically proving that this neurological disorder is acceptable, okay, and even special.
Right.
Just like the deaf community did and will do.
Yeah.
For me personally, because of my beliefs, I don't think we should be elevating ourselves in any situation. So just because you struggle with something does not make you superior.
Right. Yeah.
Or if you can do math really well or you can engineer really well, that's a gift from God.
Yeah.
It's not that you're special.
Interesting.
Yeah. So try to mix my faith with some of these forums, autism forums I go to and stuff. It's mostly about autism empowerment. And I come from more of a point of, have you considered how many people are suffering because of your expectations?
Jeez.
So can you expand on that a little bit? Like, what are the expectations sometimes?
Okay. Autists have a hyper focus typically, not to generalize, but it's true of most. We get really bugged out when we get interrupted while we're hyper focusing.
Okay.
And the school system is mostly about averages. And they define normality in that you learn 4 or 5 different subjects and you get a C and you're normal.
Right.
For an autistic child, he may hate being in class. He may hate sitting down. He may not be able to focus. And it's an injustice to that individual that his education hasn't been customized. It's been cookie cuttered. It's forced on him. Shame is his only way forward in society.
Right, right.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. And so the expectation sometimes that has been put on you is to like just get over it. Just stop being that way. Start falling in line with everybody else.
Yes, you're going to have to survive in this world, Jay. You know, this is words from my dad.
Yeah.
You got to suck it up. Don't show any weaknesses.
Ugh.
Basically translated to don't be yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't be who you were created.
Yeah. Yeah. And for boys with autism, usually they'll suffer under a so-called alpha male or machismo environment. They'll suffer badly.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Because it's not the typical play football, live through my child.
Yes, those dads bring societal expectations of what a man is.
Oh, gosh.
When we often find that society's definition of a man is 180 from what we see in the Bible.
Yeah, absolutely. Goodness.
And so you somehow got into punk music.
Oh, yeah.
As somebody who...
A lot of us do.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
As somebody who doesn't like noise.
Right. A lot of us play instruments and...
Is it because it drowns out something or...
It has a calming effect on the soul.
No way.
That's how I feel. Amen. That's exactly how I feel.
Yeah, it's a therapy of sorts for autists to make tunes, hear tunes, feel tunes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Feel them especially, huh?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the sound doesn't... So what about the sound? Because you said sound can bother you. How did you get around then the punk scene? So why didn't the sound bother you then in the punk scene?
It did. I usually had headaches at gigs.
Oh, jeez.
My eye sockets would be just killing me.
Oh, God.
And we kind of have issues with claustrophobia, so...
Dude, that is... Yeah, because you'll be playing sometimes in a garage or a basement or a... Dude, that's
And so
nuts.
people rubbing up on you, too. That is not our favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you gotta kill them when they do that. I see the way around it.
As an aside, just based on what you just said, at your fight, Seth, I was hanging out in the back, with your wife and everybody who came to watch you. And I was talking to Jessica, I think, or somebody, and I was just like, I hate this atmosphere because I don't like smells and I don't like sweat. And I don't like spit, and I don't like mouthpieces and wet gloves and all of these things. And this guy turns around. He was one of the coaches. He goes, "You're in the wrong place, son."
Yeah.
Well, I have a doctor you can see, Sean.
Yeah, maybe it's that. I don't know. It's so icky to me sometimes. But I remember being at punk shows and tolerating it because that's how you prove it's kind of that machismo, but in a different way. You prove that you were tough by how gross you can get. Brian Wardrip was telling me this morning about some spoken word from Henry Rollins. Where he would pass a cup around and he would say, depending on how much money you put in this cup, I'll do something nasty. And he would get like $3 in quarters and he would take his sock off and wring it into a cup and drink it. And it was so nasty, but I remember for some reason that was some kind of badge of honor in the stupid gross punk society that would, you couldn't prove you were tough by being strong or beating somebody at sports. You had to prove you were tough by
that reminds me of G.G. Allen.
Totally G.G. Allen. Ugh. Yeah.
And that was a subculture of punk as well. Was he hated his followers. Yeah. He'd punch them out. He'd rub shit on them. Yeah. And he'd beat them up.
He did some foul things. He did some, I'd watch his videos and be like, I can smell this concert.
Seriously.
And I'm like watching it. He cut himself, I remember.
Yeah, blood everywhere, fecal matter.
Naked, covered in crap. And
and then go out punching people.
Yeah. That was another dude who was a trip.
Yeah.
He's an interesting dude.
Him and Frank Zappa, I feel like, had the weirdest, just like, I'm like, you took it too far.
Right.
Chill out, bud.
Yeah. Well, one of my hypotheses is that some of your more angry or more creative musical artists are on the spectrum.
That makes sense.
And the reason why I hypothesize that is you see it in their quirks and their behaviors outside of the music scene.
Yeah, totally.
Reclusive, no eye contact, sunglasses, and that's what's comfortable to me as well.
I have another question, actually,
Yeah.
and I don't know if this is something that maybe you've come across in your research, but I remember when we were, let's say, in middle school, Seth, you and me, which was, I don't know how many years ago, 28 years ago or so. Am I right?
You're talking middle school?
22, 24 years ago.
If it was middle school, it was 22 years ago.
Okay.
I'm sitting with old dudes.
I remember the big buzzword was ADD and ADHD at the time.
Yes.
And you didn't hear much about autism. The only thing you knew was the extreme examples, right? Like Bruce Willis' Mercury Rising type of like Rain Man.
Well, that's all they showed us.
Yeah, it was movies.
That's all you knew about it. You knew ADHD.
What about the millions of others?
Exactly. But then I remember maybe right around middle school, you started seeing commercials saying, did you know 1 in 1,000 people are on this autistic spectrum? Mm-hmm. And then high school, it's like, did you know 1 in 300 people? And then
now it's 1 in 100.
Like, do you know
it's like
you
1
have
in
autism?
Less than 100. Yeah, it's like, you know, you probably have it. So, obviously a major part of that is they're getting better at diagnosing it and figuring out how to determine those things and maybe even like the practices of finding that earlier has improved.
Yeah, the scientific field on that has been posing for a while.
Yeah.
That, you know, everybody wants to know what causes autism. Well, it's a neurological disorder. It means that part of the brain didn't develop correctly.
Oh, it's not gluten?
Not gluten this time.
Damn it. No.
Not this time.
I lost my train of thought.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just did that to you.
What did I say last?
You were saying that it's changed since back then. Now they're figuring out that it's a neurological disorder. Everybody's trying to figure out what causes it.
Yeah.
But
and the anti-vaxxers hop on this train.
Totally.
But even more so, they're finding links to a mother who drinks and smokes too much during a pregnancy.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, really?
Stunts growth like marijuana does or nicotine does.
Sure.
Which, that's what autism is. It's a stunt in growth in a part of your brain.
Neurologically speaking. Huh. So is it connected to things like fetal alcohol syndrome and...
That's another disorder.
What's the other smoking one? They're different though, right?
They're different. Totally just different. A different neurological disorder.
Oh, okay.
Epilepsy is a neurological disorder.
Oh, wow. Jeez.
And so literally you're talking about, most people are like, oh, physical underdevelopment, right? What you can see.
Yeah.
They hadn't quite considered over the decades that it would be a brain chemistry and wiring issue.
Yeah, from externally. You can't even tell. Huh.
No.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what was school like for you? Like middle school, high school?
Oh, man.
Middle school, bunch of bastards.
I cannot tell you, from the moment I hit school, I was counting it down in my mind.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't like to be forced to do things, and you'll find that with a lot of autists is part of their struggle is they're being told to do something and restrained. You're going to come to this class, you're going to stay here
Right.
for however long it is, you're going to like it and you're going to learn it, and then you're going to apply it.
Yeah.
And for us, that's like hell. Because typically, whenever I have a meeting with anyone, if you can't say what you want to say in 10 minutes or through an email, I'm gone.
Right.
So in school as a child, the lights are bright, the kids are loud, you're captive, and you have to seem normal. And that's an all-day event. So I would come home exhausted from faking the funk, basically.
Yeah.
And but sometimes it came out in for me it was challenging authority, their knowledge, their reasoning. I would give them a lot of problems.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so what that would typically mean is that if I made a good point to my teacher, or if I corrected my teacher, that usually meant shame was coming my way, not his way.
Yeah.
So don't be a problem. Don't be a ruckus. Stop being argumentative. Be a team player. All of these oppressive terms.
That follows you right into adulthood.
It does, yeah.
Jeez.
And then you go into a business job and everybody wants to meet once a day or...
Yeah. They want the elevator pitch,
They
right?
want the elevator pitch and they're talking about the same things over and over again. That kills an autist.
Oh, gosh.
Because what we really want is progression. We have a plan. We talk. What's step B and C? Not let's rehash last week's meeting.
What's like some of your earliest things
Oh, where I could tell?
of like when you were free to be you?
I'm actually just coming into that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So
Uncovering
a few
that.
years later. So I was
Gosh.
that just sounds exhausting to me, man. Like
That's
that
a
makes me feel
lifetime of
tired.
exhaustion.
I keep trying to explain this to my wife and stuff, and the exhaustion from being not yourself is crushing.
No
I would
kidding.
do drugs just every day.
Well, there's a high rate of that because depression comes with autism, and panic attacks comes with autism.
Jeez.
Because you don't match their cookie cutter, and either you match it or you think you're faulty.
So, do you remember before, or is it as long as you can remember? You always felt like the odd one?
Yeah, in terms of whatever I'm interested in, I can go on for days and days and days. If I'm not interested, I don't want to talk. That's a symptom of autism as well.
Okay.
Hyperfocus.
Wow.
What did you say again? I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm just curious, like, I don't even know. I'm not forming my question well because I have a lot, but what do you remember, like say no parents, no teachers, no adults? It was just you, and either just you by yourself or
What did I
maybe
do?
just you with a friend.
Oh yeah, that's good.
What was
Okay.
playing?
Yeah.
What was playing like?
Okay. I always took on the dominant role. So I could control the situations and I could self-reject before I got hurt from other people.
Oh wow. Ugh.
Yeah.
So like sleepovers as a kid.
Oh gosh, it's my nightmare.
Oh man.
Because I'm sleeping on somebody else's bed or whatever. I don't know the germs involved. There's weird noises in the house that keep me up. And all I can do is think about how I hate it here. I wanted to be a friend that stayed over.
Right.
But my parents always knew that it was pretty torturous for me.
Wow.
Your dad responded a certain way. How'd your mom respond?
My mom went into perfectionism with this. So if she could guilt me or shame me to behave properly, that's what she was going to do. So if I talk out of turn, if I speak loudly, or I have an idea that people haven't thought of, she would squash that.
Jeez.
She would say stuff like, well, your friend Louie doesn't do that. You need to be more like Louie. For me, spending the night was a nightmare. Too many factors that kept me awake. So I never slept.
Ugh.
So I'd come home from a sleepover and I'd pass out and my dad would be like, no, you need to get up. I'm like, I'm tired, Dad. Well, you should have slept last night. So he'd keep me up all day.
Oh, man.
But just back then, any kind of quirkiness was squashed. And so right now in my life, I'm actually dealing with some counselors for myself to work through what it's like not being yourself for 48 years to some degree. And what kind of pain does that cause? What kind of loss is involved? And I believe I need to grieve it to some degree.
Yes.
To be misunderstood and called weird names is horrible.
Jeez. Sean knows all about that.
I just got really dominant in all my situations.
So, like, did you have experiences where, did you have any friends or anybody who did accept you and didn't care?
I've been a loner most of my life because of most people not understanding me. I guess you could say I have good acquaintances and people that I trust and they trust me. But getting into here is a different ball game.
Yeah, nobody gets that close.
Right.
Wow.
And I'm trying to improve that. Because I truly do love people. But I never quite let myself, or I never try hard enough to be a friend to them. Because with people, which was programmed into me, with people, they will hurt you or let you down. So it breeds a suspicion of all people.
Gosh. Wow.
Now, I'm trying to remember, were you military?
Yeah, Marine Corps.
Yeah, okay, so I have questions. Because that place, that's rough enough. I remember my brother telling me about Hell Week, and when he was in, just even, I remember him busting his ankle, too, because he was in there, he was at Pendleton, he was in there around the time of Bosnia.
Okay.
All that. That does not seem like environment. I mean, I know there's structure to it, so I see like there could be something good there and some like repetition, but how did it go in the military then?
Yeah. The military brought out the worst of my insecurities, which meant that in the Marine Corps in particular, your uniform had to be perfect. You had to speak perfectly. You had to behave perfectly on base, off base, wherever you might be. So to some autists, the OCD part of having all these rules is great for them. For me, it was a constant battle because I often felt orders were inappropriate. And so there was a tension with me and authority again. Then I became the authority and tried to love on the other Marines like I would have appreciated.
That's cool.
So it's like you don't deny yourself all the time, but at some point as a Marine, you do put aside philosophies, preferences, opinions, and you get the job done.
Yeah.
It did provide a toughness. Mindy had stated early on that I was really a rebellious individual.
Okay.
And so anything scheduled, anything timed, anything planned, I would fight that on purpose.
Jeez.
Yeah. So she has helped me over the years accept that some things have to be planned.
Yeah.
Because if they have to be planned, that means that I'm not in control.
Right.
Were you in just 1 4-year or did you re-enlist?
Yeah, I had 8 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Had orders to Iwakuni, Japan, accompanied, which meant I could bring my wife and daughters. And I denied those because I felt I was incompatible at that time. But after I got out, I pretty much was against the military in general.
Yeah.
And it's up till recently where Mindy's helped me appreciate that the military did provide me some structure. And some tough lessons to live in this world, but that it had many negative effects as well.
Yeah.
So like, we'd go through inspections of our uniforms, right? Everything just crisp, lines.
Absolutely.
Our ribbons and stuff they had it mapped out to measurements and widths and all kinds of stuff. And because of the autism, sometimes I would spend 3 hours on one ribbon. And it's like, well, something's a little out of whack, but Mindy was very gracious. You're like, hey, Jay, it's time for bed. It's midnight. I said, well, I got 12 other ribbons to go.
Yeah.
She's all, they look fine. I'm like, no, they don't.
Right.
So perfectionism for an autist in the military is how they survive.
Man, so 8 years and kind of, were you in during any conflict or actions or tours like police actions? Like, I don't even like the term police action. That's what we use to describe it.
Yeah.
wiggle our way around things. But what would you?
Yeah, I was in when there's some Middle East conflicts.
Okay.
Yeah. I would later go into a career where I just couldn't mention anything.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair enough.
We know what you were doing. Wink. If you can't see what I'm doing, listener, I'm winking.
He's doing both eyes for something. That's so interesting with the military piece, because I was wondering how that coordinate with the structure. But then, if you have the obsessive compulsive and you're trying to put that, I mean, I'm imagining that having to have it within a quarter of an inch, and it doesn't matter if you've done it 50 times, you go, it's not perfect.
It's an eighth.
Oh, jeez.
Seth, I would say, struggles with that OCD.
Absolutely.
It didn't really quite manifest until we were teenagers.
Yeah.
And I can see, looking back now, that he always kind of had some of that stuff.
Yeah,
it got really bad when we were teenagers, probably because of trauma and whatever else, and drugs, I think, was a major part of it.
I think you nailed it. Anxiety is the number one cause of repetitive actions.
It was, I did it. It was weird because it was like, I don't know. And no one had to even tell me anything. I just felt a knot in my stomach. I did something when I was 5, and then I couldn't stop doing it and just couldn't leave it alone. And I kind of laughed at first. I'm like, well, what's my issue?
Yeah.
But I just felt a knot in my stomach unless I got it right. Mm-hmm. And then, once...
In psychology, they call that a soothing behavior.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You're soothing yourself.
Yes.
Is it similar to stemming, or is it different?
Absolutely.
Okay. And then I would say, after many things happened in my life, and you got traumatic things, and then drugs, it just went nuts, where I was like, why do I have these, like, and it's weird because people assume with OCD, they go, oh, every single thing for every single person who has it must be the same.
Oh, no.
I have specific things I don't give a crap about, and other things where I go, no, I have to push the door this way and the lock.
Here.
And slowly, and if it doesn't slide off right, my finger, even when I lock it,
it has to feel right,
It has to feel right, how I turned it, even going, okay, brake is up at an angle, my emergency brake, it's in park, the light is off. Brake park, all right, light is off.
Yeah.
And do it, and it got worse. Jim and Rich, the guys who come out, they thought mine from the story I told them, they said, yours, they go, there is a correlation between the more trauma, they goes, yours just got exacerbated.
Yes.
So...
Yes.
Well, and I remember how it was really sad, because at first I was oblivious to it, and then I started to notice it, and it was funny, and so he would, like, mess with you, right? He would have a stack of CDs.
But how did you feel if they messed with you?
Like,
stressed.
Not good, right?
I felt borderline, psychopathic violence. I go, you don't know, you don't get that. I'm ready to, snap.
Yes. And if you love me, please calm me down.
Yes.
That's a lot of my thoughts.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
It was bad, too, because he would spend an hour straightening a stack of CDs. For our listeners, those were audio devices. Yeah, he would stack them perfectly. Yeah. And right when he finally finished, we'd go over and just mess it up.
Yes.
And he'd have to go back. And it was so weird, though, because at the time, I thought it was a quirk from mushrooms.
I'm sorry, but that's cruel.
Yes, looking back, it definitely was. But it didn't make sense at the time, because it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't the way it's represented in media.
Why are you so weird?
Yeah, it was like he had to have the fly in his boxers line up with the button on his pants, right?
Alignment, yep.
It had to be perfect. But he could sleep in a pile of dirt.
Yep.
Yeah.
Those are the contradictions. Those are contradictions.
Yeah. And so to me, I was like, well, it's not an actual mental thing. This is just like a side effect of the acid or something.
Yeah.
And,
and
that was part of it. But as it went on, it started to get less funny, where it was like he was more of a slave to it.
Yes. It does. It captures you to some degree.
That's a good way to say it. Yeah.
It moves from impulse to compulse. So it's a compulsion where, in order to help or soothe whatever has triggered us, or that we're afraid of, or that we're trying to be perfect about, we now go into a repetitive emotion.
Right.
Like, this is way too stressful. And that was my hair pulling, and then I would pick scabs in my head.
Yeah.
There has to be a release, right? And so
yes.
There had been some studies about autism and people who cut as well.
Oh, I believe that.
That many with autism, because they've been so oppressed in their family systems and also in society, look for pain because it makes them feel alive.
And controlled.
And
right?
control. I control my pain and my pleasure.
Yeah.
And then eventually the pain becomes pleasure, which
man.
is a perverted interaction.
Yeah. Jeez.
You know who helps me with it? It's funny. Is Maverick.
Our kids help us all the time, man.
I'll be looking in my window in my car. I'm checking it. And he goes, Daddy. I go, yeah. He goes,
Yep.
It's okay. He puts his hands by my ribs, and he actually rubs my ribs. He goes, it's okay. He goes, you did it. It's okay. I go,
that is beautiful.
It is, isn't it? He goes, yeah. He goes, hey, and buddy, we're proud of you. And I go, thank you.
He told you that?
He told me that.
What a stud.
And we walk up to the front door. I go, my car is okay, right? He goes, it's okay. I'm all,
Yep.
Yeah, it is. Okay. But it was funny. It was like this. He started soothing me going, I was like,
it's because he loves you.
I was like, how'd you, he goes, you get like, and you can't see me, people are going to listen to us. He said, you get like this, you're very tense. He goes, you don't listen to what I'm saying. You're just zeroing in. He's like, and I can tell, he goes, it's usually after work or others. Like he just knows things. It's
the stress is built up.
But he started doing that. So he like soothes me.
Beautiful. Funny you say that.
So crazy.
When my girls started understanding this better, they did exactly what you speak.
That's nuts.
I have issues with forgetting a lot, almost everything. I don't remember how to get places. I lose my train of thought, and that's why I ask, can you repeat your question? Mm-hmm. Before, they had kind of ridiculed me a bit when they were younger. Like, what do you not get, Dad? You know, like, I know that, or I figured that out. How do you not know how to get over there?
Yeah.
So it felt really bad, but as they became teenagers and college age and stuff, they have been very loving. So if I'm not figuring out how to get a place, they just gently guide me to that place.
Oh,
that's awesome.
That's sweet, man.
Yeah. You know, if I've been loud, because sometimes it seems like Tourette's a little bit, but I can yell just out of nowhere. And sometimes they just let me know lovingly that was really loud.
Wow.
And it's this balance of them helping me without me feeling embarrassed, because your children now are parenting you to some degree.
Now, what happens if you, Sean, and I all take like 4 edibles right now? Like, what's...
Yep.
Because I feel like that'd relieve my stress. I mean,
can't really speak to it, but let's say there theoretically there are many marijuana products that are beneficial for an array of mental health issues,
including autism stuff.
Yes.
Really?
I didn't know that. See, I knew it for PTSD. I didn't know
Same for OCD.
Seth needs an excuse.
So the idea behind it is that, you know, most people have thought of marijuana as in the extreme sense of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
That, like a crazy psychotropic.
You know, like whenever religious people hear about it, they typically go to the crazy skater stoners.
Yeah.
They go to events where someone slipped into psychosis. They go into like stories of it ruined their life.
The reefer madness.
All stoners are lazy. Those are all extreme terms, and they're not founded in truth.
Yeah. There
are some people who abuse it, but there are millions who do not and reap the benefits.
I'm glad no one abuses alcohol.
That has been one of my counterpoints about marijuana is some of the people who tell me about marijuana and there are these strict goals these strict rules and the shame they bring with it. And, we'll spend some time and they overdrink.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how any of that's different because you can control THC levels. Many of it is scientific. Some of it's for joints, for anxiety, for depression, for cancer pain. Are all these people like crazy potheads who don't make it in life, or are they actually using a natural solution to help themselves?
Yeah, but alcohol is legal, so that means it's okay if you overdo it.
It's one of the higher abused things, right?
Totally.
Alcoholics make wrecked children.
I have been punched by people who are on substances, either family members or friends. Mm-hmm. Never was it marijuana.
Never weed, yeah.
It was never marijuana. No. Alcohol, yes. Coke, yes. I have never had a guy where I go, dude, that weed
Yeah.
You're too
aggressive.
even the term angry drunk, it's angry drunk.
There's a reason for that.
The only thing I had with weed was like, stop bringing up Dave Matthews Band. I don't want to talk about this again.
Or The Cure.
Yeah, it's like, even if it's a good riff, I don't care. Like, you can give me the grace argument where I don't want to talk about Dave Matthews Band or The Cure again. And that was it. That was the biggest conflict versus alcohol. I had guys who loved me try to smash my nose in because they were weeping for 2 hours about their dad and then snapped at me and picked up a chair because they just, and it's not like it created the anger, just brought it out.
Right. And it's usually a religious person, and a lot of them are pastors or in leadership. And with marijuana, to some degree, I believe it's been demonized. As we know, all substances are about the dosage.
Yeah.
And so even within pastor teams and such, you're going to run into what they experienced and their prejudices against the stoner culture.
Because even it's interesting. I've known dudes who say, "I'm not better than them. It's just a fact." They say, "Well, I would never take weed," but then they took stuff that was close to OxyContin. And I go, "Do you know how many guys died or are addicted to OxyContin with like back pain and stuff?" And
opioids are now completely regulated. They were abused for years and years and years. And they're highly causing dependency.
Yeah.
Highly dependent.
That's a good word for it.
Yeah. In spite of being regulated.
Right.
Like, even in spite of them being legal and having this counter that you have to go across, there's still addiction problems to OxyContin.
Absolutely. Some people
crazy.
overdo pot, but we can't take the few extremists and make theological decisions over it.
Yeah.
I had, I won't say his name, but one of the pastors from our church wrote a good response to it actually from my location that I wish it was circulated more, but it was only circulated among the pastors for counseling needs. And I agreed with it because he had actually tried the legal version, and then he also was aware of the legal version.
Yeah.
And saw both sides, saw the benefits of dudes who saw their friend get blown up by IED, and they took a small dosage. And
PTSD.
And I know some of you are going to ignore me on this, but he took a small dosage and had a buzz that was the same equivalent of a buzz as if you had a few beers.
Yep.
And he was okay. He didn't lose his job. He was cognizant. He could
felt calm too.
Felt calm. He could do apologetics still. He could still make, because this is the big thing with being sober, he could still make a defense of the faith. He was still sober actions. And I could say this argument, and I know there's still guys who do to experience, I'm not judging them.
Yeah, some have extreme experience.
They go, it is sin, it is sin, it is sin, no matter what the option, and you can't convince them really.
Alcohol and overeating, let's not talk about that.
Right. Overeating's big.
Overeating.
Especially in the pastor.
How many pastors do you
cohort.
see that are overweight?
Yeah.
Dude.
But that's okay.
Yeah.
I soothe myself with food, but a natural herb, which is probably healthier than any of the food you're eating, is the bad guy.
I'll take weed over diabetes. Like, seriously, I'm not judging them, but it's like to say, I'm okay with my heart having problems, clogged arteries.
Right.
But you can't have a quarter of an edible.
Right.
I go, really? Because I'm pretty sure that quarter of an edible is not going to give me a heart. They could have heart attacks, strokes. It just.
Yes. And cancer patients, can go into shock because of the pain levels.
Yeah, totally.
Jeez.
And so this is more of a science. Circling back, it helps autists quite a bit to calm down. And when an autist can calm down, they can be more themselves and do their jobs better. They can parent better. So there's a lot of implications that the church needs to work out here.
We need to call this episode the Autism and Weed episode.
Yes, I think
seriously,
so.
dude, do you know the people it would draw just the title? They're like, I want to hear about autism and weed. I'm like, I'm here and I want to hear about it. I don't listen to our podcast, but I think I'm actually going to subscribe after this episode. I think I'm going to give it a shot, man.
Well, usually what's presented to us either through media, social media, or even, word of mouth is the extreme cases. People are always talking about extreme things, like with polarized politics.
Yes.
The same is applied. And I have noticed that certain Christians with certain beliefs will not even think scientifically to explore it.
Yeah. Yeah. I can even see like the progression in media. Like you're saying, you were just watching shows where there's main characters who are on the spectrum.
Yes.
Yeah.
And think of how much it's changed. Like one example, I don't know if this is important or not, but I really like it, so I'm going to talk about it. There was the movie in the, I think, early 90s with Steve Martin called Parenthood, and Keanu Reeves was in it.
Parenthood.
That was such a good movie. And the little kid struggled with something. They didn't even know what to call it at the time. He had anxiety or something like that, right? And they like profile this kid who just has these freak out moments.
Yeah.
And then 10 or 20 years later, they have the show Parenthood, which was loosely based on that film. Mm-hmm. And they're calling it, you got Max, and they call it autism.
Right.
Or Asperger's at that point. Because it's been defined. It's only been 20 years, but now it's been defined. When it was originally in the movie, they didn't even have a name for it. It's insane.
It's true.
So I think it's maybe or hopefully good that at least in the media it's being, I don't know if it's being portrayed better, but at least it's being portrayed frequently enough to maybe potentially match the
I'm really
actual
happy
ratio.
about that, you know?
Yeah.
Sometimes Hollywood will generalize the disorder. Mm-hmm. But like Seth was saying earlier, it's not all the same. We don't all have the same
totally
repetitive things, but there are some common things we have. Mm-hmm. And usually typically called learning disabilities.
Right.
Which can be a negative term.
Totally.
Well, I've never encountered that. Fourth grade. Fourth grade, they said, and they kind of allude to, you might be retarded, and then fifth grade, they said I was gifted within a year.
Yeah, they didn't even use learning disabilities.
It's because a lot of times, if you were smarter than your teacher,
yep, exactly,
you would be kept down to some degree, and usually that's achieved by saying odd, weird, unruly. And, teachers in their flesh will, if they have a student who appears to be smarter or challenges their ideologies, will be shamed or guilted to some degree.
Totally. Well, and there's that. I just know from being a school bus driver, there's a level of authority and respect that you have to keep in the classroom or on the bus. Because if you lose that, those kids will eat you.
They'll run all over you,
right? So I'm sure, like a lot of it is done just to keep that element of authority in the classroom. But I think it's messed up sometimes when teachers or bus drivers or whoever do that at the expense of a kid who needs a little more.
And you see this, like a term I coined a while ago was dumb rules. Mm-hmm. You'll see authority figures, in order to appear more powerful, will make dumb rules.
Yeah.
And if you're autistic or if you're a troubled youth with emotional challenges, you'll be shut down.
I feel like the government treats everyone in America like we have autism, because anytime we question anything, they make dumb rules. Mm-hmm. They say it's our fault. Well, if you had done this, they don't have to explain anything. If we ask questions, they arrest us or beat us. And
or they talk in a different language.
Different language. They cut. I mean, it's just, this is so interesting with power structures too, and with how, this is an interesting thing. This gets into that idea of othering, that when we encounter someone who doesn't fit our mold of what reality should be or what we perceive the Imago Dei should look like, what do? How do we
treat them is the question.
We don't say, oh, you're reflecting another angle of the Imago Dei. We go, no, you need to reflect the Imago Dei the way I do. And we encounter stuff, and out of so many things, whether it's fear, experience, prejudice, we other them, because it's so much easier to go, well, I could get to know them, I could feel uncomfortable and get through these things, or actually be vulnerable, or I can other them. And if I other him, he's the problem.
That's right.
He's the bad. Oh, and he needs to conform to my standard. I don't have to get vulnerable. I don't have to change or adapt. He's the problem. And then other kids join in. You go, yeah, I'm one of you. He's the weirdo.
Yep.
Boom. You other him. And it just...
It's a ruling ideology. And typically it's not, the ruling faction doesn't typically care about you. They want to control you.
Right. Totally.
And if you're an autist, it even goes further to control you. And it's pretty interesting. One of the negative terms that I've heard, and I've even heard out of my family, is that I'm an idiot savant. And I know their intentions and I know they're goodwill, but that's a very hurtful comment.
Yeah, it's still derogatory.
You think I'm an idiot, but I have some crazy skills.
Right, yeah.
That's a contradiction in terms.
Totally.
Either accept the whole of me or none at all.
Yeah.
So that was a hard one to work through. Idiot savant.
Yeah.
You're all tolerant racists.
Right?
Bunch of, just call people pricks. That is so interesting how much of sin in this world comes down to looking at people who God said are human and saying no, they're not, or saying they're less, saying
They're beneath.
they're made in my image, and we say not as much. Or the question that this comes up in the New Testament: who is my neighbor? Just that same question. He goes, love your neighbor, and we don't just accept that. We think of, autism, we think of the poor, we think anyone, we go, and who's my neighbor? Because it's that way to weasel out to go, I'll love my neighbor. But then we go, okay, now how do I find a way to show autistic people aren't my neighbor? It's the same thing C.S. Lewis brought with morality. People don't walk into court and say, a criminal doesn't say, well, murder's not wrong, stealing's not wrong. They come in and argue why what they did wasn't stealing, what they did wasn't murder. Yeah. So someone goes, I 100%, I'm a Bible-believing Christian. I think we should love our neighbor. And then they go, now let me tell you why he's not my neighbor. Because if you say, well, love your neighbor, they go, totally agree, brother. Amen. They go, now let me sell you on why he's not.
Yep.
Because they know they can't argue you shouldn't love your neighbor. But let's argue why he's not your neighbor. Why there's some way humanity is always...
We're always elevating.
Yeah.
How can I feel more important, which indicates a lack.
Exactly. And it's like, really it's insecurity playing out. In my experience recently, I've had a problem with people saying we need to build a wall because the Mexicans aren't our neighbor. But more recently than that, and that's a whole thing that we've gone into the last 60 episodes of this show.
Oh, is that political?
Yeah, a little bit.
I didn't know by the way people yell at me.
But recently, I've been trying to put together some support for a group of refugees.
Yeah.
And people are all for it. They're like, you know what? Refugees. Yeah, that's a good thing to get behind. Let me support you.
What if they're Muslim refugees?
And I'd say that. I go, it's a group of people who are mostly Muslim.
Yeah.
And some of them are not even Muslim. They're even like a more distant religion from Christianity.
They could be Hindu.
Yeah, and all of a sudden, people are like, maybe you shouldn't do that. Or maybe those people have what's coming to them. Or maybe
you should help your own first.
Yeah.
That's one of the most racist comments you can hear.
Oh my gosh, I think so. Yeah.
What do you mean my crazy. Own? I'm pretty sure we were all made in his image.
I can top that. I can do worse. No, that's that. Well, because it's such a subtle way to say, I've heard this. I heard this once growing up. I'm not against you marrying from this group. I just wonder about, I worry about, what would happen to, your poor kids and the stuff they'd have to deal with. And just, cause you're not marrying someone who's your own. And they slide that in real quick. And this thing, and I go, you're concerned about my kids. So it's compassion. You're just so concerned about my kids. And I go, well, why is it I have to change? Why doesn't the world change? Instead of saying, well, they're wrong, it goes, well, you need to adapt and marry. Yep. And I'm like, but it's these little, everyone thinks, prejudice, and I'm not just talking race. Everyone thinks looking down at someone and saying they're not as imago Dei as I am is always this blatant thing, but you could do it in subtle ways.
That's from the devil.
Subtle little, just to even go, you're so good for someone with autism. Subtle little.
I've heard little things like that. Yeah. Like, I didn't know you had it. How incredible for you.
Right.
And I get it. They want to relate and feel, they mean good intentions, but it comes from a ruling factor perspective.
Yeah. I think I said that 20 minutes ago.
So those in control, those with the power are always wanting others to conform.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Almost like guilting you, saying, hey, I'm glad that you were able to find a way to conform. Maybe the rest of everybody can. Or maybe you're a better version of this type of person or something like that.
Or we have, where teachers are actually educated that autistic children have different things to offer to the class. You don't have to force them into certain behaviors.
Yeah.
I think the biggest...
And you teach your students to appreciate how they're wired.
Yeah.
I think the main thing for me is, because usually I have more questions, I think he just blew me away, because I think I came in this conversation with presuppositions and misconceptions. Yeah. And as you were talking, I went, I'm not sure how to respond, because you're not fitting the generalities that I understood. And that's why I started listening, because I went, I had this understanding of what this was, and then I'm matching it with the discussions we've had in Sing Smoking Cigarettes. And I went, well, and that's what's thrown me off, is I went, man, I really thought I had understanding, because I've worked with so many children with autism, and now I'm going, okay,
they understand more than you know. They are perceiving more than you know. 100%. And so if you have a lack of eye contact or a lack of response, that doesn't mean shit.
Yeah.
They are responding in their soul and their mind.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because I don't even know if I knew that was the thing. When you even first said, I went, well, what is all right. I've had dudes who said, hey, I need to tell you I'm joining the military. Hey, I need to tell you I'm gay. Hey, the idea of, I go, well, what is the proper response when someone says, so turns out I did this and this testing and I'm on the spectrum of autism. And I went, well, I don't think I'm supposed to say like happy birthday or congratulations. So I go, what? And that's why my only answer was, wow. Cause I go, well, I don't know. I don't know if that would have, if you hadn't told me, I don't know that I would have even perceived it, whether I'm dense or whatever.
No, you're not.
I'm like, what's the response to that?
You're typically only presented with extremes, like I had mentioned before. You're not mentioned, like, let's just take political parties, for instance. Who are the people in the gray? We know who are on the polar opposites. Who are all the children and adults that are in the gray?
Because you were 140, you said, with your testing?
140 out of 200, which was a high score.
But where does high functioning?
Are there kids?
Like I said, I'm on the line. If I had gone 150.
That's high functioning, or that's low?
No, it's low.
Oh, okay.
So I'm 10 from low, 10 from high.
Wow. That's
insane. When you start labeling and categorizing and only showing the extremes, you're not getting a full picture of the demographic.
Right.
Right now, 1 in 100, 1 in 70 is what I read latest. There's someone in this neighborhood right now who struggles with it, and it's not accepted.
Yeah, totally. And the big thing to me is like you scored 140. Yeah. And you're halfway. You're on the line, halfway in between. But to me and to many others, you're just Jason. Yeah. Right? And that's like...
And I appreciate that a lot.
Yeah. But I think there's like a ton of people that are never going to be able to just be who they are.
They won't, because they've been shamed, neglected.
Yeah.
We also have crazy issues with shyness and social awkwardness. So even if you got us to talk, we may not.
Yeah. So even if something magic happened, and we casted a spell, and the second you walked out that door, you walked into a society that 100% accepted and didn't like patronize or.
That'd be so beautiful.
Or do anything. That would be beautiful. But even then, it would take a really long time for you to recover from a lifetime.
And a lot of times it's your families and friends who are the harshest.
Yeah.
They want you to be who they grew up with and who they favor. What if you're different than that? What if they found out that you really didn't like or have things in common, but rather you wanted to be loved and accepted?
Wow.
I feel like I have to go pray for a few days. That's just so interesting, because I always think of, I don't know, I think it's because of my history and even like political protests. I think of othering like racially and all, and now I'm going, oh wait, you can other someone that way. You can other. That is so interesting to me.
Yeah, a lot of times we're explained in workplaces as serious, looking down a lot, pragmatic.
Kind of in a tokeny way.
Yeah, like a lot of math teachers and engineers are described this way.
Yeah.
But the crazy part about an autistic person is that we do have some gifts. It's a give and take. Some are good at math. I'm good with words and emotions. But they vary amongst people. But as in like group mentality kind of things, I've overheard in certain circumstances, don't talk to him about philosophy or psychology.
Jeez.
Which means that they think I'm rambling and that it's stupid.
Right.
I would just think you're Dutch. I would assume.
Right.
I'm like, you mean like my relatives, every freaking theme or subject?
But they think they know more. And that's one thing that drives me crazy is people who think they know more about philosophy.
True. Philosophy, and it even goes into our ideation of missionary work.
Oh.
So,
Interesting.
if you feel enlightened and you want to share it, you can be much like the Imperials were. You can believe that a culture or a people are faulty because they're different.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you bring your culture to them as opposed to
and you oppress them, basically.
Yeah.
Converting them to, instead of Christ, converting them to a cultural,
It's a religion or a cult rather than Christ himself. And so you see a lot of white people, particularly white people. It wasn't enough that we oppressed the world. I lost my train of thought, but
that train's just blowing on in my
it
mind.
is, man. What were we talking about?
So white
train
people
has
ruined
sailed.
the world. It wasn't enough that they oppressed and conquered. You've seen white people do it specifically.
But that same racism and elitism comes out through mission work. They're there to do a skit. They're there to read in English. They're there to give food and take a picture over it. Why do we need missional pictures half the time? Do not let the left hand know what the right hand is doing.
Right.
So elitism, especially from whites, even in the churches, is still happening.
I went to South Africa and all I got was his new profile picture. Yeah.
And I don't mean to be racist towards white people.
Oh, I am. But
As a
that's fine.
self-loathing white, I agree.
Sean and I were were we dusty whites or just low income? I feel like we were just low
We
income.
were lower income whites, but
Well, I'll be honest, I'm a
we hated
trailer
the
white myself,
Yeah, exactly.
AKA we were just rich whites would go, you're just a disappointment.
which would never think that we had an intelligent brain. Am I right? I mean,
I know, yeah.
in terms of generalizations.
But as far as art goes,
Yes.
it's usually the oppressed person or the person who's experienced poverty who has the most to contribute to an artistic society.
Yes. Or people that are considered odd.
Yeah, definitely the odd ones.
The Picassos,
The
the
Picassos.
Van Goghs and stuff.
Yeah.
They're just odd. Well, no, they made beautiful art.
Yep.
It is interesting because you had sometimes a missionary, if he went to China, he wouldn't just say, here's Christ. It's, now we're going to show you how to be a Westerner.
Yes.
And it's like, I really don't give a crap if they act like a Westerner. I want to know, well, who's your king? Who's your Messiah? And Van Gogh, I'd like to point out once again, I thought Jason would have been Dutch. Van Gogh was Dutch. Another weirdo.
Cut off his ear. Drew with crayons.
I'm Scottish, so, I guess we could, same, maybe. We all kind of mixed there for a while.
There's some interesting white folk. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
Dutch, Irish, and German.
Okay.
So
And
That's dusty.
they say the Vikings literally came from Germanic tribes.
Yep.
I don't doubt
Yep.
it. Bunch of cold, weird white people. Dude.
Bunch of wasps.
Well, we gotta
Yeah.
put these kiddos to bed.
And he's not just talking about taking a dump before he goes to sleep.
So I think if I had to wrap up what I want to say
Yes.
Yeah.
is I would like for our communities to be more aware of different types of people and be appreciative of different types of people, because you're missing out on intelligence and you're missing out on creativity.
Yeah.
Amen.
Damn right. Except crackers. Freaking cracker-ass crackers. I don't know. I can say it.
You could say it.
to the
You're one of the few that can.
Honky-ass fish
That's our
bellies.
word.
Yeah, that's my...
Welcome to the Department of Redundancy.
Well,
yeah.
Jason, I wanted to say, first of all, that I appreciate you coming here and talking to us
Yeah, that
about
was
this and
mind-blowing.
exposing that.
This is really my first
I gotta say, you're pretty brave for doing it. Just knowing everything, I would be terrified to do it. And also knowing just the effects of this your entire life of not being yourself must be just crazy. So I appreciate that. And also I appreciate just the awareness that you brought around this whole thing. And yeah, I'm hoping that we can, maybe make a difference with all our millions of listeners. Maybe they can spread awareness.
I guess the main charge would be to people listening is,
don't be dicks.
Okay, yeah.
I mean,
All right.
And please address your superiority complex.
Yes. Yeah. That's good. I like that.
I donate to Scott's Tots. I don't know how everyone else donates, but no, I think that was actually, I legitimately felt like I grew from that and was challenged.
Totally.
It actually made me actually appreciate the idea of dignity and worth for humans more. This has been Tales from the Ditch. If you got any questions, message Sean because I won't respond. Complaints, questions, if you want to donate beer money, if you had questions for our guest, like maybe you heard it and said, I don't know, I'm not sure about this, and I want clarification on autism or weed, just message. So zip it up,
Zip it out.